look at someone, can you tell them if they're over-cloaked? Like if you look at me, can you go, yep, you are or you aren't? Or
Well, that process is almost a pointless process, because at any one moment, all of us at some point, depending on the emotions we're denying, are influenced by a spirit. When you talk about over-cloaked, we have to look at the degree of how much a person is influenced by the spirit. Now, you've seen, I think, young Simon was once, I think, here in an auditorium, over-cloaked by a spirit. I think Liz, where's Liz? You were once over-cloaked by a spirit here in the audience. Josh, you've felt that at times, haven't you? Being over-cloaked by a spirit. When a person's completely over-cloaked, it actually feels, when you can feel an emotion. So even if you can't see the spirit, what you will feel from the person is it's almost like the whole thing now is just a facade. What's going on now is just like totally not real. It's something that's being manufactured. That's what it feels like.
to the observer.
To the observer. Does that make sense? So it feels like the person who is observing is now feeling this feeling. This is an entirely manufactured thing that's now happening in front of me. And the truth is that it is a manufactured thing by a spirit who's connected to the person, right, acting out their stuff. So you can actually feel that and sense that for yourself. Now that's a far different degree of influence than a person who's going about their daily business getting influenced by having little thoughts dropping here and there and here and there all the time and being influenced in that manner. One of the ways you can recognise within yourself that you're being overcloaked at any moment in time is whether you go into places of emotions that seem totally uncontrollable but not yours. Do you understand that? Some of you have experienced this, yes? We have had an experience of emotional experience that seems totally uncontrollable to you at the moment, but it actually also at the same time feels like it's not even yours. Now, in that moment, you are being definitely overcloaked by a spirit, and the spirit is now working through you. How many of you have been to Pentecostal church? How many of you have been to a place where they have the gifts of the Spirit, and they flop around on the floor? And yeah, how many of you? Yep, okay. So you can see in that place, they're moving around the floor, having all these different experiences. What's really going on? You can feel it, can't you, in that moment? Wow, this is some kind of spirit thing going on now. The spirit is now influencing this entire experience, right? And the truth is, in that place, the person involved is not also in a real state. There's some hook the person has to that spirit doing this thing. Now, in a Pentecostal church, the hook is, if I'm flopping around on the floor, I'm affected by the spirit. And everyone in the audience admires me because I get affected by the spirit every week. Does that make sense? So that's one of the emotional hooks. My emotional hook is having this feeling that everyone admires me doing this. Right? And there are a lot of other emotional reasons why we might hook in at any one point in time to a spirit and allow the spirit to act through us. In our day-to-day life, though, I feel the more insidious type of spirit influence is the type of spirit influence where you're merrily walking, going along, and you have these thoughts just dropping in. Half the time you think you're talking to yourself, and in reality you've got different spirits influencing you through the process. So whenever you notice a thought drop into you that's out of harmony with what you've learnt to be love, take note of it. So my suggestion is, carry a notebook around even with you and write it down. I have to address that. They come from somewhere. It either come from me or it come from someone outside of me that I've allowed to connect to me. One of the two. So let's address it. Write that one down. So let's say the thought is, now I've had quite a number of you come up to me and say, I've had thoughts of wanting to kill you. Like where people have had thoughts of wanting to kill me. And I've said to them, well, do you think that's your fault? Why would you then hook into that thought? Do you know, what about me annoys you so much that you have a thought drop into your mind that you'd like to kill me? Now, for some it's, he's talking about emotions all the time, I'm sick of it. And that's enough. And that's enough to cause the thought, right? And for others it's a feeling that the spirit connection is going to break their power, right? And they are very confronted by that, and so they then have that thought, kill AJ, and that gets repeated to them. How many of you, do you mind admitting those people who've had those thoughts? How many of you? Yeah, to kill me. There's more, actually. There's a few more. There's a few few more people? There's a few more. There's actually quite a few. You'd be surprised. Now, all that is just spirits dropping thoughts in. Does that make sense? The spirit is trying to influence you in some way. Why? We've got to look at why. And secondly, we've got to look at how did this thought even enter me? There's got to be a hook that I have into the spirit. And you know, the hook is often a lot more innocent than what you believe. See, a lot of times what we do is we judge the thought. So we go, I want to kill AJ. Wow, where did that come from? That's a terrible thing. I'll never say that to anybody. You know what I mean? We don't say it to anyone, and we don't express it to anyone. We hold it to ourselves. We're thoroughly confused, and we go around for weeks worried about why I want to kill somebody. Do you know what I mean? And instead, what we need to do is say to ourselves, all right, I was connecting to a spirit there who wants to kill AJ. What was my connection to the spirit that allowed the spirit to drop that thought into me? And you know, it might be something innocent like this, I need approval from a man. You know, a lot of deaths in history, a lot of murders in history have actually occurred because somebody wanted somebody else's approval. You see this every day in the news, don't you, when you hear of murders? A lot of them are, one person wants this person to murder that person, they go ahead and do it. Why? Because they wanted the approval of the person who wanted them to do the murder. You see? And this happens all the time with our own connections with spirits. All of these things. Why did I go and sleep with that girl? I didn't even love her. Because you've got a hook into a spirit who wanted to sleep with that girl. Does that make sense? What's your hook into them? Oh, what do you feel? I might feel powerful when I've got lots of women interested in me, or whatever it is. And whatever that hook is causing the thoughts to be dropped into my mind, and then I allow those thoughts to generate into desires in a way. And because it's merging with my own unhealed emotional state, of course that's quite easy to achieve, and then off I go and do it. And if we allow ourselves to look at the emotions that are involved in each interaction, we'll quickly find and quickly disconnect from the spirit in each interaction. So while it's easy to tell when a person is over-cloaked completely, it's not so easy to tell when a person is just being influenced with their words. And to be frank, we can actually assume until we're at one with God that we're actually going to be influenced by spirits all of that time until we are at one with God, quite easily. And then after we're at one with God, we're going to be influenced by spirits who are in a state of love all the time, rather than spirits who are negative and causing us to think, you know, things that are not harmonious with love. The question was born out of a fear.
Yeah, I have a lot of uncontrollable rages at home.
Yeah. And what do you feel about them?
Well, it's a little bit embarrassing to be, well, everyone in the neighbourhood hears my voice, and I like to swear.
Yeah.
Because good girls don't swear, and I've been enjoying that for a brief amount of time, but now I can't stop.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I really like it.
Yes, and that's the, you see, there's something in there for you. So my suggestion is, let's have a look at what's going on. And I'm glad you brought this up, actually, because there are a lot of people who want to be in an uncontrollable rage.
Yeah,
and because it feels powerful, like it feels really powerful. So let's look at what's really going on. I'm in a rage, and I know when I'm in this state, I'm really being heavily influenced by this spirit, whatever the spirits are. Now, in your case, often it's, what do you feel, woman spirits or men spirits, rather than me tell you?
I don't know. Everyone tells me it's just me. There's something, well, not everyone. My husband
He's everyone.
thinks it's me, but I know that I'm out of control. I mean, I'd have to say male, not because I feel it, but because it's very forceful. And
what kind of things do you say? without the expletives.
Well, then that would be silence.
Oh, okay. Who do you want to say them to?
I say them to my husband, but now
Okay.
what's actually happening is I say it to my husband when my children are around because I can't even stop it.
Okay. So here's your hubby. Right? He's a bit crotchety because he's like not sure
Scared.
about it anymore.
Paralysed with fear.
Yeah. So he's in a fear. And you project rage at him, and it's always mostly your husband. Like it's rarely your children.
Oh, Lewis is at work. It can be my children.
Okay.
No, it's actually 97% of the time it's
a man.
my husband.
So it's a man, a male.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's very important in the analysis of what's going on.
I have 2 sons and a daughter.
Okay.
So.
And if you do get angry with the children,
Daughter.
the daughter is the one you get angry with, is it? Mostly.
Yeah. Oh no, the middle boy, the middle child. Oh, all of them.
I love you. No. Okay. So, but to a lesser extent, about 95% of the time it's aimed at a man,
Yeah.
a grown man. And then occasionally it's aimed at the children,
Yeah.
but nowhere near as much. So just okay. Now I'm going to suggest to you something that is a truth, but you're going to find it difficult to perhaps accept, but I don't think you will actually. You love being enraged.
Yeah, it's fun. I know, otherwise I would have stopped it.
Why?
Because I get to say what I really want.
Right, so what's that telling you?
That I can't say what I want normally. You know what? That's so true, because I always say to my kids, why don't you listen the first time? Why do you wait till I'm screaming, swearing, smashing things?
Before you listen.
And they don't. They only ever do what I want, as in, yeah, I know I control.
No, it's okay. Just be
But
honest,
it's
okay.
like they won't, and my husband won't do it until I've just lost it. And he gets it because then he's got a crazy wife and he feels self-satisfied. Oh, poor me. Not that he says it, but everyone thinks my husband's first name's Poor.
I love how honest you are, mate. This is really lovely. By the way, this doesn't mean I agree with you getting angry with your husband.
No, but it's like he wins too. I think he likes seeing me worked up. I think he really enjoys it because you know what? When I say I'm getting really upset, Lewis, yes, everyone, it's me. It's like he'll go poke. And again, just leave me alone. I feel really upset. And if you continue, or if I stay here and start smashing things, poke. And he must love it, the exhibition of it.
See, now you're not owning. Right? And this is very careful. We need to take care here because when we get in a state where we're not owning and we start blaming the other people for our own actions, then we're getting way out of harmony with love and truth.
I'm completely out of harmony.
That's okay. It's okay. We need to acknowledge when it's happening, right, first. And so please don't feel that anything I'm saying to you is going to be a judgment, by the way, either. But I want to be honest, though, about what's actually going on. Every time you say, but he poke, and then I get angry, or the kids don't do what I want until I get angry, or he doesn't do what I want until I get angry, there's a reason why you're getting angry. When you get angry, you can control them into doing the things you want. Agreed? You know that?
Yes.
Okay. So the purpose of the rage is to control the person in fear to do what I want.
Yes.
Now that comes from within you, this very big grief that nobody wants to do what I want, that nobody really loves me enough to even notice what I want. Does that make sense? And the rage is the avoidance of that grief. And that grief is attached to some very strong feelings that you have that you're not loved at all. Right? And these come from childhood emotions. Now while the reason for your rage certainly is you do not want to feel the deep grief, right, of feeling unloved,
Unwelcome.
Unwelcome. Unloved. Unloved. I can't. Unloved. Unwanted. Right? And not listened to and all those things, right? Now, those grief came from the child experience. I'm doing great today. Child experience, right? That grief comes from the child experience. And it's so powerful in you that you'd prefer to be in a rage than feel it. You follow me? You prefer to be the rage. The rage is preferable. Now, while you're preferring the rage, you are giving every woman's spirit who's angry with men an opportunity to express their rage through you.
It does feel pretty full on and intense and powerful, and like that. Once it starts, I can't stop it.
Exactly. And what's actually happening is every single spirit down the street who's attracted to these different women who are actually angry, all of a sudden they want to visit you, because now you're the one who's really in the place of expressing what they feel towards the male. And you, a lot of times, don't even remember what you've said in that state, do you? Really?
That's right.
Like just going to almost go into a blackout state of
it's true.
And they tell you afterwards, and you go, whoa, what's wrong with me?
And that's why I've been wondering. I don't think it's all me that I'm doing. Oh,
of course, but it begins with you.
Yeah.
Okay? And it begins with your desire to not feel, the desire to avoid those groups of emotions that are extremely painful for you from your childhood. Now, what I would be praying about is, it's pointless at this point praying about experiencing the grief and experiencing the unwanted and unloved feelings, right? Because the truth is you don't want to feel them.
Scared.
You're scared. So talk to God about how scared you are to feel them instead. Does that make sense? You're very afraid to feel them, so talk to God about how afraid you are about feeling. You'll actually find that you'll connect with a lot of the grief this way quite readily by talking to God about how afraid you are to experience them. But at the moment, what's happening is your fear of experiencing your own deep grieving emotions is allowing spirits to just connect to you and express their rage through you to a man who doesn't deserve their rage.
Or mine.
Or yours. And ironically, the women spirits with you are being quite gutless. Did you hear that, girls? Quite gutless, right? The reason why is because if you're going to be in a rage with somebody, doesn't it make sense to be in a rage with the person who made the grief, who created the grief? And that's not certainly not your husband.
No, he's gentle.
Okay, so sure, he may have a whole set of emotions where he prods you and prods you and prods you and prods you and so forth, which is something he does need to work through, but that's not an excuse to continue allowing a heap of women's spirits to be in a rage with him through you. What is really going on is this feeling here. These feelings here are being avoided. So talk to God about how much you want to avoid them.
Yeah. This is not because, maybe it is, but I just had, when you were talking then, he is a big suppressor and comes from a big family who suppress, and I'm just wondering how much of this he draws to himself as well.
Be very careful with that reasoning. Can you see why?
I acknowledge that some or most of it could be to get me off the hook, but...
Let's just look at that, because that reasoning is quite unloving. Basically what you're saying is that his law of attraction invites you being in a rage with him. Now, while that may be true, once you start going down this path, you'll start justifying your rage through that truth. And that is a place that's going to damage your soul quite a lot, right? So while he has different emotions that he is suppressing that cause a group of women spirits to be attracted through you to actually express their rage towards him, that is actually immaterial in this discussion.
Yeah.
The really important point is that you do say you love him, or maybe at times, these times, certainly don't feel like you do.
No, and that's what I say. I hate you. I hate you.
Yeah. And while you're in that place, you're just avoiding this stuff with your dad, really.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's all with your dad, and you're just avoiding the stuff with your dad by projecting at a man who doesn't deserve and is nothing like your dad. Do you see that? So rather than feel guilty and about that, the better thing to do is to talk to God about how afraid you are of dealing with these grieving emotions, right? Rather than hooking into these spirits, because these spirits, they can ruin your life and ruin your marriage if you keep allowing the hook into them. They can also destroy a lot of things in your children too, by the way, because their rage then gets demonstrated through you, and your children, the male children, are going to be absolutely petrified of mummy after a while. In particular, the male children rather than the female children. They're going to be absolutely petrified of mummy being in this rage after a while, right? Or they're going to grow up believing that that's love, which would actually be just as damaging, wouldn't it? Like if they married a woman who's angry just because and felt that was love, that would be very damaging to their life. So it's really quite urgent to, rather than allowing the rage to continue, but you have to be honest that you like it first.
I know I like it.
You know you do like it.
Yeah.
And why do you like it? That's the question. Why do you like it? Yeah. That needs to be dealt with emotionally. Why do I like this rage? What does it give to me that I haven't got?
Well, power and control.
And so I actually feel powerless and without any control.
Yeah.
When I'm not in a rage. Can you see that these grieving emotions are going to feel very powerless, no control? That's what they're going to feel like. And at the moment, you feel very unloved. And this feeling of being unloved is not in your current environment so much as your childhood, but it's being reflected in your current environment through your law of attraction. So this is why sometimes your husband neglects to do things that you ask him to do.
Like listen.
Like listen, which he doesn't have to actually do,
no, that's
to love
right.
you. But yes, we have that. This is related to Dad again, isn't it? Dad never listened. You know, so whenever your husband does something Daddy used to do, straight away I'm in the rage. Whereas I need to be straight away in the grief. And if I'm not straight away in the grief, then there's a terror. What am I terrified of? I'm terrified of how much grief there is. So talk to God about how terrified you are. Talk to God about getting help to get through the terror and down into the grief instead. Because while you're avoiding terror, rage is the only answer.
Thank you very much.
And that will also then disconnect you from the spirits who are wanting to be in a rage with you. And it is like I say, by the way, the whole street of women in the spirit world just comes straight to you when you're in that state. When a person's in a rage, and if it's in a rage towards a male, there's all this gunk flying off you, right? And it's actually going, and if the male's in a place and your husband is in a place where he will receive rage from a woman, so he needs to deal with that issue emotionally. Why is he standing around and receiving rage from you? Like nowadays, I'd just walk out, and I wouldn't come back until the rage stopped. You know what I mean? So why is he receiving this rage? There's something going on for him there. So what's going on? So he's receiving all this rage, but that's immaterial. You've got the issue of not wanting to get to the grief, so the rage is there. And all this stuff are flying off him, but all entering him, because it's actually, he is open to it entering him. And now these spirits go, you Betty, here's another man we can abuse. You fantastic, you know, and they don't care what the man is. They don't care whether he's a nice man or not a nice man or anything. They'll just go there and do it because they can. Now these women, if you try to disconnect from them, might even become quite nasty with you. And you have a hook into them. And it's not just the grief that you feel, which is actually the grief they also feel towards me. But the hook is this hook that many of you ladies do have, and that is the hook that us women have to stick together. Us women have to feel the same way about men. You know, us women, we've had a lot of trouble with men in our lives, and they've abused us and they've treated bad. And you know, a lot of the men, they're just being sexually promiscuous and they cheated on us and all sorts of things. And we've got to stick together now, even though sticking together means sticking together with a bunch of rageful women. Right? And that needs to somehow stop on the planet before this dynamic will change. So look at that hook as well. This feeling that you have that you've got to get the approval of the women as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not really conscious of that.
Yeah. And when you're not conscious of that, that actually allows the connection even further. How's that?
Good. I'm realising I'm scared of my boss, my new boss, who's a woman, hates children.
Yeah, and you're constantly trying to get her approval?
I'm trying to avoid her criticism, certainly.
Certainly.
I think she's a loose cannon.
Just like the women with you and you. Is that right? Yeah. See, be careful too what you judge in others, because a lot of times what we judge in others we actually have going on inside of ourselves, right? So the truth is, for many of us, we're avoiding deep grief, and in the process of avoiding deep grief, we're in a place of terror about the deep grief. When you're in a place of terror about deep grief, you're better off talking to God about the terror rather than going into the rage. The rage does not help you at all. It damages your soul further, it damages the people around you further, and it doesn't help you get to the cause of emotion. So you're far better off skipping that process and allowing yourself to express the terror. And I know that's a powerless feeling. Like, you know, it's a less powerful feeling expressing terror than it is expressing rage, right? But allow yourself to feel the terror and express the terror to God. Talk to God about it in that moment. Remember what I said to you. It's like that when I talk to God in that moment, I'm now preventing the influence because now I've got this connection going on with God that these spirits around me straight away feel repelled about. Right? They're not interested in anybody talking to God. They're interested in somebody yelling at their mate. That's all they're interested in. So they go away in that moment. Who else hasn't had a turn today? Can we come down here?